Welcome, guys, to our nominee interviews for Epoch 7. Today, I've got Scoriox with me. What's going on, my man?
Yeah, not much. Just like working on content every night. You know how it
Yeah,
is, just
yeah,
going
yeah,
hard,
absolutely.
getting it all done. I've got a lot of other stuff I'm working on as well and building up Wildfire. So that's been really exciting. I've got an awesome team helping me out with that. So that's been really awesome.
Yeah, no, I've been seeing you put in the effort for that and seeing that kind of flourish and grow again is good to see. All right, so let's not waste any time. Let's jump straight into the questions. I've sent you the questions beforehand so you can prepare. So let's just jump straight in. So the first question we're going to start off with is something that I'm still asking 3 epochs in is the topic about council pay. So clearly it hasn't been put to rest. There's still discussions about it. We've just seen a recent IIP about it regarding changing it to from USDT or USDC into ILV. What are your thoughts on that? What's your take on this current structure of the pay, and how do you feel about this new IIP?
I think the IOP is good, first of all. There's really nothing wrong with it. Handing it out in ILV makes sense. I mean, I would have converted it to ILV if I were on the council anyways, honestly. So maybe I'm a little bit biased there, but it makes sense in terms of preserving runway and everything. I don't see any issue with that. In terms of negotiating the pay, I'm definitely all for. I think maybe we need to lower it. I don't quite know the full extent of the council role. It's not super transparent at the moment, which is something I'd like to look into fixing or solving or changing or whatever. But I definitely think negotiating how much they are paid is always up for discussion. And I don't know how much lower people might want to bring it, but that's something that I'd be asking the community rather than myself.
Yeah. So if you do get elected, let's kind of dig a little bit deeper into that. Based on what your perception is now, and you saying that we should lower the council salary or the council pay, with your perception of what they're doing now, what would you like to see that salary look like?
I don't think seeing it go below 1,000 USD a month makes any sense. I think I've seen a few suggestions for half, 2,500 a month. Besides that, yeah, I think anywhere in between there is probably where I would be looking at. On my current perception of what they do, that could definitely change. I know that they obviously have a lot of discussions, they vote on proposals and everything. And who knows, at any point in any epoch, the entire council role could scale up really fast. I mean, because like the game isn't out yet. When the game's out, maybe they're doing a job worth 10K. Who am I to judge, you know?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And let's actually again stick on that a little bit. This is something that a lot of people from the community requested that I ask you guys. So if you are elected, would you actually be willing to forfeit the council pay for the good of the Illuvium runway?
In theory, yes, but no, I don't. In my personal beliefs, I don't believe anyone should ever work for free, and that would go directly against that. And I can't go against that in my own values. Again, it also people have also said this before, but it says a lot about who you're hiring. If you're hiring people to work for free, then obviously there's a bit of a different expectation there as well, and you want to have as higher expectations as you can. And I believe wholeheartedly in that. Yeah, I don't think I would forfeit. Obviously, I have a lot that I do in my daily life. I work full time and everything as well. I have barely enough hours in the day, and I'd be sacrificing as many as I possibly could to be putting it into the council, as many as required, and probably more so as well. But if that meant forfeiting the pay, then I probably wouldn't be submitting myself to be on the council. In all
Yeah.
honesty.
No, that's fair. That's and we again appreciate the honesty. All right, moving on to the next question. So this is actually one that I really like. But in the last 6 months, how do you think that you have contributed to Illuvium, and why do you think that this has actually been helpful to the DAO? I kind of know where this is going to go, but
Obviously, this goes deep, and I'll try and keep it as brief as I can. But obviously, I've been creating content for Illuvium and helping educate the community the past 6 months and bringing people into Illuvium. And I found out recently with some of my tweets and things. People are saying like, "Oh, I got in because I saw Scoriox's videos or whatever." Anyways, I've definitely been doing a lot of that for Illuvium. I have also spent years mastering design, which is essentially problem solving. And some people don't really see it that way, but that's certainly been my experience studying at uni, going to the workforce and everything. Essentially, it's problem solving, right? And what that allows me to do is I'm very strong at being the translator between what I would say is engineers and consumers. That is the main role of design and the main skill set that I currently have. And I believe that's very invaluable, especially in a role like the council, where they're essentially translating community concerns and translating current technical difficulties and things like that within the game, the team, and the rest of it, and bringing the two together and becoming that bridge. And that is the role that I've trained for 5-6 years at least, in being able to fulfill that role. And it hasn't necessarily been exactly in this way before, but I'm so deep in Illuvium now that I understand the game, the core concepts, the core values of both Illuvium and what the community expects of them. And through the combination of all of these things, I feel like I could do a really good job.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that actually kind of answered the next question, which was what's the unique value proposition that you can offer that separates you from the other nominees? I mean, you kind of answered that. Is there anything else you want to add on top? Anything other, like these special, unique qualities that you can bring?
As a designer, I haven't done a whole lot of game design, but I've done a lot of UI design. That's probably something that makes me a bit more unique than some of the other candidates. But as a designer and a creative in general, I understand the creative process a bit better than some others might, as well as all my delving into the tokenomics. I've got a pretty good handle of that as well. I don't know if the tokenomics side necessarily makes me all that unique, but as a person that can easily understand the community sentiment, being the content creator and so on, then that definitely gives me an advantage.
No, absolutely, absolutely. All right, so let's move on to governance fee 2, and this is something that we've been talking about for a while. It's very, very close to being proposed. From your perspective, what do you see as the major flaws of one? And if it was up to you, how would you like to amend that in governance fee 2?
Probably the biggest flaw is not necessarily the transparency, but the marketing, if that makes sense. So the marketing in governance V1, it's very easy to miss all the things that are happening in governance because I would say that most of the community isn't very interested in the politics of Illuvium, which is fine, but I still think more should be done to try and engage with as many people as it possibly can. And currently, it's not quite fulfilling that role. Which is going to have an impact in the long term. I feel like there are a lot of proposals that go in there, and there's 3 or 4 or maybe a dozen major voices commenting on these things. And essentially, the way I see governance working is the more voices you have, the better pool of people you have to pull from. Whereas if you have very few voices, you have a chance that they all have very much the same ideas, and then you're being governed by the very few, which I think is a flaw.
All right, awesome. So with that answer there, I noticed that you pointed out the problem for sure. What is the solution of how we can actually solve that? How can we make it more marketable? How can we actually get more people engaged in that? Do you have any ideas on how we can do that?
I definitely think, any sort of web platform, especially on the Illuvium website, then you can start embedding these things into the game as well. Obviously, making sure you're not impacting those that are just gamers that really don't care. You don't want to affect their experience, but definitely building out the infrastructure so that you can announce these things more seamlessly. For example, I don't think we really even have like an announcements channel for governance announcements at the moment. Even that, as a bare minimum, might be really helpful. Or at least not one that I'm super switched into. And I think, more announcement mechanisms, just embedding it into the website is obviously going to be a big step no matter what. I think governance V2 is kind of the big proposition that it's answering there. So I think governance V2 will solve a lot of the things. And if there's anything I feel like governance V2 is missing, if I'm on the council, I'll definitely be making an effort to patch those holes.
Yeah, fair play. And actually, again, another interesting one that's being brought up by the community. Let's say you are elected and governance V2 is approved during your term. Would you be willing to cut your short to conduct a new election to transition to governance V2, potentially risking your position on the council?
The first thing I would say is that I'm unsure how governance V2 fits into all of this. And obviously, I would be trying to find the most logical solution forward. If that is that the council stays and other things are elected and stuff in regards to governance V2, then that would seem like an obvious path forward with the least amount of hassle, because if you have to re-elect the council, then you've got to do the whole nomination voting process and things all over again. So unless it's forced to do that, it seems absurd to me. But at the same time, if that is what is necessary with what governance V2 entails, which I'm not quite sure on, obviously, if that's what's necessary, then I'd be happy to forfeit it. I think governance V2 is far more important than the council.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, and the last question that we've got today, man, you've been smashing through these, but if you had to formally write an IIP to really clarify what the council members' duties are, the time commitments that need to be, the expectations of the council member, really, What would you say those are? What would you really expect a council member to provide if they got into that role?
I think there'd certainly have to be a certain level active in the community. I think they would have to be diligently watching specific channels, whether it's ideas, ISCP discussion, whatever. They definitely have to be diligently watching over those channels. That's the first one. Talking with each other without a miss, right? Like you're not going MIA for 1 or 2 days. Even if you go MIA for 1 or 2 days from the Discord channels, which you really shouldn't be, but even if you did, you have to make sure that you're talking to the other council members as regularly as you possibly can. And the third one is voting on proposals promptly. I mean, obviously, you've got to discuss it with people first and things like that, but as promptly as makes sense. Those are the three key things. Outside of that, yeah, just making sure you're making sure that you've always got your foot on the ground in terms of what the community's needs and wants are. Even if they're wrong, if you might think they're wrong or whatever, just making sure you've got an ear to the pavement, I think is important. But what that entails is not really specific.
Yep. And regarding the time commitments, how much time do you think a council member should actually be putting into this? How much time do you think is required for those duties adequately?
I think they should be making an effort to search out for proposals as well. That's probably the thing I missed. I think that's probably going to be the largest time consuming thing. Is not necessarily I want everyone to get a proposal onto my desk by Monday or anything like that, but they should be actively asking people, are there proposals you want to see made? And then taking the next steps to try and craft maybe a handful of them that makes sense. So I think that would take a certain amount of time, maybe 4 to 5 hours a week minimum. And then you've got your council chamber meetings and everything, which is 3 to 4 hours a week minimum. And then you've probably got your voting, a pretty negligible time factor, to be honest. But the discussions around it, maybe 1 or 2 hours a week minimum. So you're looking about 10 to 12 hours a week at a very minimum, but maybe closer to 15, 16, or maybe 8 to 12 in those sorts of ranges around the 10 mark, I reckon.
Fair play, fair play. All right, awesome, man. So that's it for all the questions. I appreciate you coming on. Is there anything you kind of want to say before we end this, before we close this out? Any kind of last words?
We had a lot of amazing candidates in the last election. Obviously, I ran for election and I loved seeing who was elected. I thought we selected a really awesome team. And I've heard about many new candidates that weren't even running last time that are really amazing people as well. So take your time, really think about who you want to be on the council, and just vote for who you think is going to do a good job. Nothing else really matters. And yeah, just good luck and please go vote.
Please get vote. Appreciate you guys watching. Keep up to date. Follow the channel. Keep up to date. We've got a lot more of these interviews coming up, and we'll catch you guys later. Peace.